What are the rules? I mean, are there really rules? What are they? If there are rules, are they too hard to follow? So, what are the rules? Ah, I'll make my own. Today's particularly hard topic. I've spent quite a bit of time this morning trying to figure out how to like unleash this topic of what are the rules. And so I thought, well, gosh, remember the cocktail story, verse, teach, story, verse, lesson, story, verse, points, story, verse. So the verse that came up to me this morning in my Bible app was clearly the same that maybe some of you are reading. But it's interestingly enough, the exact verse that fit the topic. And this happens often with me, that was resting on my soul over time. So I want everyone to understand that Second John 1:6, and this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit. We're going to end up at that verse, but I want to start with a story about the rules. What are the rules? And I think the idea is like, what are God's rules? We know God has rules. We know life has rules. We know that we need to live by rules. We need to play the games by rules. We need to walk on this planet by rules. We need to be in America by rules. We have systems. We have the judicial system. We have the executive system. We have all these things that are laid out for us, and the world is not short of rules. So why are rules such an uncommon thing when it comes to thinking about God? I don't think it's uncommon for those of us who worship and live in the Bible and work through the Bible, but I mean, even myself, I find myself not really remembering the rules or thinking about living or abiding by the rules. Maybe that's because maybe I'm deeper in my walk than I was when I was a younger man and they're more innate in me, but I still break the rules because I'm not thinking of the rules. But when I go back to check the rules, I understand they're the rules and I try the best I can to abide by God's rules. I remember a time when, man, I was a much younger man, and Kara, my youngest daughter, was probably 8 or 9, and I'm obviously a lot of you know I'm a Detroit Lions fan, and I remember uh, basically buying some Detroit Lion tickets to the Chicago Bears game. And I think I got online, I bought the tickets, had them all put away. I knew the game was a 1 o'clock game, it was Eastern Standard Time, and it was all set. It was a Sunday morning. And somehow that morning I got up early. I don't know how real early it was, but I got up early and I pull up the tickets. And in my mind, the game was in Detroit, but no, the tickets I had were for Chicago. So I remember, actually, that's not the correct way I told the story. I was getting up. I was going to go to Detroit, get the tickets, do this, do that. I didn't have the tickets, but I had committed to going to the game because I knew I could drive to Detroit and get the tickets. I wasn't buying them online. I was actually going to scalp the tickets. And so I was so heck bent on getting to this game, I realized it was in Chicago. So I knew it was a 3-hour drive versus a 2-hour drive. And it said, no matter to me, I grabbed my daughter and I called my nephew, Austin, and said, Austin, do you want to come with me and carry the Chicago game? Because Chicago was his team. So these kids, let me go with 10 and 11, something like that. And we jumped in a car and we drove all the way to Chicago. I picked Austin up at his house and we headed to Chicago and there was a game. So long story short, the story isn't about getting to the game as much as it's about once you're at the game. And I remember watching the game. We were in the way high bleachers up top of Soldier Field. And it was amazing. The stadium was beautiful. The day was beautiful. My daughter was into the Lions. I was into the Lions. Of course, Austin was into the Chicago Bears. And some of you that are football fans will remember this day because it's a day where the Lions uh, were going to beat the Chicago Bears, and it came down to the very last play. If they made this play, they would win the game. And Calvin Johnson, one of the greatest receivers to ever play the game, went up, caught the ball in the end zone with literally little time left on the clock, caught the ball in the back of the end zone, put his both feet in bounds, and went out of bounds, had the ball in his arms, and as he came out, the ball after he crossed over the goal line and everything was done, the ball didn't stay in his hands. He kind of let it go or just was celebrating or something of that nature. Lions had won the game. Well, what had happened though, there was some misunderstanding in the catch and control rule in the NFL at that time. They had changed the rule that you had to continue like into the tunnel with the ball or something crazy like that. But what had happened was the Lions had won the game. The Lions that were there were celebrating the game. Everyone was going crazy. My daughter and Kara and I were going crazy, and poor Austin and the Bears fans that were sitting in a Bears stadium, they're just up dejected. They knew it was over, right? Well, then all of a sudden the referee comes back and says, let's review it, blah, blah, blah. They end up taking the catch away from Calvin Johnson, reversing the touchdown, and the Bears won the game. And my daughter Kara at 9, 10, 11, I don't know how old she was, but she was sassy. She was upset. She was like more genuinely upset than I was. And she was jawing with the Bears fans. And the Bears were taunting this little girl. And I realized there was more Bears than there was Lions. And we were in the Bears den, not the Lions den. Kara wouldn't let up on it. But as we walked out, it was interesting because we lost the game. What are the rules? Right? Like nobody knew the rules. No one understood the rules. Even some of the Bear fans going, it's like you won the game. We're like, I know we won the game. We escaped with our lives. Kara was not backing down to any Bears, and those guys had a few beers in them for sure. And I grabbed my child and grabbed my nephew Austin, and we escaped the Bears den. But the reason I want to tell you that story is because the rules were unclear. To this day, you can Google the Calvin Johnson rule. You can see where it was made incorrectly or made correctly. They were adapting to some new rule, some old rule. You see, what happens in life is when the rules aren't clear, we make our own rules. When the rules aren't clear, we make our own rules. The other thing that happens in life is when we don't like the rules, we make our own rules. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today and probably tomorrow and maybe even Wednesday is what has God got to do with rules? What is the rules? What are the rules? What were the rules? Are the rules changed? Are they new rules? And how important are rules? And I thought with the setup story and with 2 John 1:6, and this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands or in obedience to his rules. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. So what does that mean? I want to work backwards into that. And I want to play a video right now that really challenges me on this ideal of morality and rules, right? Morality and rules. Well, let's watch this and let's talk about it.
It seems like you're creating a fantasy by thinking that there's something else.
Okay, good. All right, you're right. Maybe God is just my fantasy. Okay, good. You're thinking, I think you're thinking clear now. All right, Cliff, fine. Then maybe your God is just a fantasy that you've created because you're not willing to face the meaninglessness of life. You're right, that's possible. But by saying that, what you've communicated then to me is, Cliff, I realize that because there is no God, life is meaningless.
Well,
right?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, I don't. Cause I'm not sure if I do think there's a God, and I think that my life has meaning. So I'm living proof, like that you can have both.
Hey, but wait a second. If you're saying, Cliff, what really motivates you to believe in God is because you don't want to face the logical conclusions of atheism, that life is meaningless.
And you're not okay with that, and I am.
Pardon?
We're two different people, though, and you're not okay with that, and I am okay with that.
Okay, are you really okay with the idea that your life is not meaningful, that you just create your own meaning?
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is,
like an example, I create my own meaning. How?
You can say that the purpose of my life is to develop my mind and help other people. But you can just as easily say the purpose of my life is to develop my mind to steal money. That's just as legit.
That's immoral.
That's right. And if there is no God, this universe is amoral. That's correct. Well, then who defines morality if there is no God? Who defines it? See, there's nobody to define it. Except you and me and all of us, and the white South African and the Nazi and the murderer and the rapist, the terrorists who destroyed the World Trade Center. I mean, I hope you don't think that those terrorists who flew those jet airliners from the World Trade Center September 11th didn't think they were doing something good. Of course they thought they were doing something very good. That's why they sacrificed their lives for it. I am convinced to the root of my being, they were wrong. Absolutely wrong. But see, that only can be true is if there is a real value of justice that is totally violated by those terrorists flying those jet airliners in the World Trade Center. And the only way there can be a real value of justice is if there is some type of mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines this value of justice, that gives lives dignity and value.
So if there is no God, who defines morality? And I think that of that entire video that you got to watch there with me, and maybe some of you've seen Cliff on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, he's a remarkable man. He takes the Lord to the street. He takes his thoughts to the street. He has an answer for almost anything. And if there is questions that he is not sure on, he certainly addresses those. But I think what's interesting about Cliff is that he does take it on. And the point from that video I want to talk to you about today is, if there is no God, who defines a morality? And I think about the Calvin Johnson rule. I think about the football rules. I think about the sports rules in general. I think about even as a child. I'm not even going to say a child. I mean, even now, I mean, I think I do things that are kind of silly sometimes. And I'll get up in the morning, especially when I'm in my Indiana home, and I make coffee every morning. And the trash can is on the other side of the kitchen. Well, the kitchen in the house, it's a really tiny little cabin we have there. But after I make the coffee, comes out, I take the cap, the little key rug cup, and I shoot it across the kitchen into the trash can. Now, this is not an easy shot, right? Because you have to go a fair amount of distance. But you got the trash can flap. And so if you don't hit the trash can flap directly in the center, and the weight of the key rug doesn't take the flap of the trash can down so the key rug can fall in the trash can, it bounces off to the right or left. And in my mind, I make this shot every morning, and I say to myself, if I make this shot, I'm going to have a great day. Anybody ever do that kind of stuff? And a lot of times I sometimes miss, and the shot comes a little far to the left, it bounces off, coffee grounds end up on the floor. So Tracy, that's why you're seeing coffee grounds on the floor sometimes, because I missed the shot and forgot to clean it up probably. But what do? I go pick up the coffee grounds. I don't want the day to be a bad day for me. So I make up a rule that says, okay, if you go back further and take a shot and you make it from a further distance, then you're going to have a great day. So I go back the next thing. I go back, and it's a harder shot. So if I make it, it'll invalidate the first shot, right? So I take the shot, boom, it's a harder shot, bounces off, almost in, but doesn't go in. More coffee grounds on the floor, and I'm looking around. It's 4:35 in the morning, and no one's there, and I'm like, okay, man. If I go back further and I make this shot, that invalidates the first 2 shots that I had taken, right? Make the shot. My day's great. Up and over. Poof, no good. I go back for the 4th time. This is crazy. I've never missed 3 in a row. I pick it up and like, okay, if you go back behind the counter, back by the front door, and you make this shot, the day will be good for you, Todd. Come on now, somebody. I line up, I take a shot, and I throw it overhand. All the way clears the doorway, clears over the tabletop, goes and hits the trash can perfectly in the center. Swish, down it goes. I made the shot. My day is going to be good. But what are the rules? I'll make my own. And I guess so it's meant to be funny, but also to let you know that, man, I'm a sinner just like all of you. I'm a sinner, maybe not just like all of you, but I'm a sinner in the kind of ways that we do sin. All of us have sinned. All of us are going to sin. All of us need to understand that the only thing sin does is keep us away from God. It doesn't keep us from going to God if we've accepted Jesus Christ into our heart, soul, and mind. So I don't want you to be afraid of sin as much as I want you to be aware of sin, and that there are rules that God has created for us to live by. We can't just make up rules because that is immoral, right? In Cliff's video, he talks about why God is so important to us because he has set up a clear rule what Calvin Johnson was abiding by. Calvin Johnson scored the touchdowns. Detroit Lions won that game. They should get that game back on the record. I mean, that's just craziness, right? That's just craziness. And you can't just keep changing the rules in your lives so that they make sense for you in your life. And I think that's what Cliff was talking to us about. I think that's what Cliff really wanted us to be understanding about. And I think he's citing what God had to say. And in Second John 1:6, and this is love. All rules fall under the abidance of love. But God gave us the 10 commandments. This is the beginning of God's rules. No other God, no idols, no misuse of God's name, not remember the Sabbath, right? The father, honor your father and mother, no murder, no adultery, no stealing, no lying, no coveting. He gave us 10 rules to live by. In the Old Testament, he didn't say get rid of those, but he said, I give you 2 more in the New Testament. And that's what Jesus said to us in Matthew 22:37, when the Pharisees came to him and tried to trick him. He says, there's 2 commandments we live by now. 1, love the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And 2, love yourself as you love your neighbor as yourself. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that by abiding to God's rules, you are honoring God. And that these rules are put in place for us to live by. I mean, I think there's just a lot of us that don't understand that there are technically rules to live by. And it's not just man's laws. I mean, if it was man's laws, then there would be no place for us to have any guide rails or goalposts or or rudders. Because man without God is meaningless. Yeah, I said that. Man without God is meaningless because they have a bandwidth of rules set by their own belief structure. God gave us free will. I wrote a whole book about it. Your will be done. God gave us free will, but he wanted us to abide by his rules, first in the Old Testament and now in the New Testament. And the thing I want you to get this morning is that before we move on to this later on, tomorrow and Wednesday, is that without God's rules, we live in an immoral world because there's no structure, there's no backstop, there's no one common denominator that we are called to live by. Therefore, allowing us to believe in anything that we want to believe in a world of rationalization. And I've been caught in rationalization a lot in my own life, and it's immoral. Because what happens is that we choose to want something so bad that we make it moral or correctable or correct or righteous in our life. It's like we want something, so we make rules to fit what we want. I wanted a good day. I missed the shot, so I changed the rules. I missed the shot again, so I changed the rules. I missed the shot a third time, but amended the rules so that they would fit my belief structure or the game that I was playing in my head for the fourth shot. Clearly, if I make a longer shot, clearly, if I go around the corner, over the countertop, into it, just past the refrigerator, and it's a much harder shot, and I make that shot, then clearly what I wanted to win should come to me. I changed the rules. I won the game. Did I really? Did my day turn out better? I know it's hocus pocus. It's just one of these things I do in my mind and have fun with. But at the end of the day, that is the beginning of rationalization. When we don't get what we want in life, we change the rules. When we don't hear the things we like in politics, we change the rules. When we don't hear the structure or when we don't like what God has to say about sin, we change the rules. When we don't like things that are going on in our life, we redefine how we believe them, all to get what we want. And if that's how we are called to live our lives, then there is no morality in play ever. That's why I need you to choose Christ. That's why I need you to choose the Bible. That's why I need you to understand that if you believe the Bible from front to back, that you have rules, you have guidelines, and the things that you don't like about the Bible, too bad. Because there's things in life that aren't always going to fit our structure or what we want. There's a lot of bad things that are going to go through our lives and things that are going to happen to us that we're going to have to persevere against. We're going to have faith, because if we don't persevere to God's rule, then we show what's called a lack of faith. Hebrews 11:6, and without faith it is impossible to please God. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. This is my day to day. Here's my challenge to you is, what are your rules? Right? What rules are you abiding to in life? Are you just changing your shot? Are you like backing the shot up every time until you make the shot? I mean, I would have went all day long. I would have went back. I would have been around the corner. I'd have been shooting all day till I made the rules fit me for my day. That's not correct. Telling on myself, it's a stupid little game, but it's exactly what's going on in a lot of our lives right now. When we don't like what God has to say, we change the rules. The greatest commandments of all, the two rules that I want you to follow that we're going to talk about. The 10 commandments are there for us, certainly to live by. But Christ said in Matthew 22:37, and he repeats it in Luke as well, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Love, 2 John 1:6, and this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands, as you have heard from the beginning. His command is that you walk in love. Love is the greatest commandment. It's never going to change, never going to change, never going to change. God created the Old Testament for us to live by. He created the New Testament for us to be saved by. He created all of this for us to follow his loving rules. Don't change them. Live by them. And that's where your faith will come to fruition. To live by God's faith, to trust his rules, is how we do our life morality. It's our faith. The definition of faith is believing the unseen, right? Following God's rules, following his accordance, following the things that he's put in front of us. I just challenge you today to follow his rules. And some of his rules are to show up, show out, talk about himself, right? Train the saints and evangelize. And so I just wanted to let you guys know, go to wiredifferently.com, wiredifferently.com, buy these shirts, buy prophecy shirts, buy scripture shirts, buy something, show God's faith, wear God's faith. Come on now, we're wearing Nike, we're wearing Adidas, we're wearing all kinds of champion shirts, we're wearing all kinds of things, but why not wear something that professes God as our faith, God as our Lord and Savior, God as our rule maker, right? Come on now, somebody, type in Wired 15, get 15% off your shirt, your hoodie, your long sleeve tee. Come on, there's over 70 some choices for men and women's cut. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for everything, you guys. God bless you. Have a great day. Come on now.